Welcome to training for your retail or home business using the QuickBooks 2021 desktop. My name is Tracy, and we will be going through setting up your items to sell, creating purchase orders and bills, estimates to invoices, reconciliations, and finally some reporting on that. Let's get started. First items we're going to go over today are preferences, chart of accounts, and your item list. You'll notice the desktop screen has drop downs here. Also, that correlates with the sidebar shortcuts. And then we have the icons for the best practices as you move through the system. First up, we want to go up to Edit. When we select Edit, also select your preferences. Preferences help guide you through the best way of using the QuickBooks and also the easiest way. So what I found, because I use Windows, is I like to have the press enter as I move between my fields. Some people use Macs and you can use a tab instead of enter, but I like to have this set up. I also like to have the beep taken off because every time you make a transaction, it records and it places a beep there. So you can turn that off. And then I like to have it to automatically recall the last transaction. So if you've already put in a Chevron bill that goes to fuel, it will pull that up and know that the chart of account that you're using is fuel. Next up, we want to go to accounting, still in the preferences. Accounting has another tab where it says company preferences. You want to select that, and you can also select if you require account numbers or you're using any class tracking. Class tracking breaks out different segments of your business. So you could have class tracking that would have a retail or a wholesale. And it will also produce your financials based on those and yet combine them. It's very cool. Also in here is the option to set a closing date and password. And we want to make sure once you've done all the hard work for a month that you come in here and set this closing date. And I like to have a password with that. Usually I just do it for if I've closed December out, I'll make the password December. Something easy, but it triggers you. So if you try to make a transaction into those prior dates, it won't let you disrupt your information. Next up, we want to go to the drop down of lists, and we're going to look at your chart of accounts. Usually when you set your company up, it asks you what type of business, and if you select retail or service, it will give you a default GAAP approved chart of accounts. But we want to go look at that and actually customize it to our business. So in this case, I'm working with Carl's Computer Shop. So he sells computer parts out of his home. What we want to make sure is we set up checking account as the first thing, because that is the most important on getting your bank account in. And down at the bottom is the option to select account and new. Each account, you select the type of account it is. So if it's income, you would select the income here, and you'll see all the other options: receivables, long-term liability, and cost of goods sold. What I first want to do always is set up the bank account, and I'm going to give it the account type of bank, and I'm going to name it my payroll account. People always ask me, how do you get your beginning balance in there? So it's on this screen when you create the account. Your best way to do this is you'll take your statement ending balance. That's if you started the end of December and you're going to start January 1, the bank statement says your ending balance as of 12/31 is this amount. And that's how you get your opening balance in there. And then it reflects inside of that bank register. It's just kind of like the old school bank register where you'd have your payments recorded on one side and your deposits on the other. This is showing a deposit because we were positive when we opened the account, and it's an opening balance equity. That is a default account in here, and feel free to copy this same way. Next up, I want to just add a cost of goods sold account in here, but let's also look at the different accounts that are already in here. So they have assembled systems, consignment, discounts, merchandise, and service. Usually when I set up my sales, this is how your reports are going to show your income. Same with the cost of goods. So I might want to add a merchandise cost of goods so it correlates again with my sales, knowing what I've sold. I would have a cost of good consignment or a cost of good of assembled systems. And first thing you want to do to add that, again, go down to account and new. In this, I'm going to select a cost of goods because it's not available right here as a default of a simple income or expense account. This is a cost of goods. And over here, you'll notice I'm going to name it merchandise cost. That's really all I need to put in to actually show in my chart of accounts now I've added a merchandise cost. So when I'm actually adding my items, I'm going to say when I sell it, I want it to show as merchandise income. And when I actually purchase a product to sell, I want it as merchandise costs. Pretty simple. Next up, I want to actually create the items I sell. So we'll go to List drop-down and Item List. Items, in this case, for a computer shop, he's got cable installation, which is really a service item. And he's also got some inventory parts, such as hard drives and monitors. Same thing like we were adding in the chart of accounts, you'll come down to Item and add New. Now, an item consists here of a different type. We've got service items, meaning basic labor or anything that I'm not going to keep track of in an inventory part. You can also do assembly, so I could have 4 parts that makes one assembly. And I've got non-inventory parts, meaning I'm not going to keep track of that inventory item, but it is considered an inventory to me. And then some other things to make your invoices and items inside your invoice, such as discounts and sales tax, which we'll go over. But the first thing we're going to set up is cable installation. And we're going to give it an item name. That means the name I'm going to use on the invoice. And again, the main things I want you to get out of this is the name and where it points for income. So in this case, it's cable installation. They want to call it sales or service. They can even put a price in here so the price automatically comes up when you go to sell the item. You always have the option to change that at any time. And then in this case, they do use a subcontractor, so they've selected this purchase information. And it will also be able to populate with a cost. I usually leave the cost blank because I might get a better price on that, so it will still put in whatever I purchased that for. Now, an inventory part is a bit different because we're going to keep track of this inventory part, and he wants to keep track of the hard drive. So he names it as a hard drive, gives it a cost of where he purchases it from, and then we'll go over to the income account, which is sales merchandise. Now, again, I could take that drop down and actually have it go to a different income account if that was not correct, but this is where you're actually grabbing it from, where we just created. All right, then you have your non-inventory part, which are to him accessories, nuts, bolts, things like that you're not going to keep track of, but you do need to be able to bill it to the customer and show the type of income it is. And again, I had said that you can add like discount items, sales tax items. So you can have multiple sales tax items. They can be associated with customers. Main thing is I'm going to get the name in here and the rate. And then of course, if I have out-of-state sales, I want that to be at 0. All right. Next up, we're going to put in the vendors and go over purchase orders, bills, and the payment of those bills along with sales tax. Going back to the main screen, we want to set up our vendors first. So I want to actually come over here and we go to a vendor center. I could get it from the drop down here, but I'm going to just select it, opens up, and this is where all my vendor information is for all my different vendors, and also the balances that I owe. And you'll notice there's activity for each of these, and also when you're going to add your vendor, it's got a few more folders here that lets you add more information, but the main thing is to get the name in there and address. I like for my vendors, if I'm keeping track of 1099 subcontractors, I can select this and it will keep track of me so I can run those 1099s at the end of the year. Also at the bottom is the option, if I no longer use that vendor, I can make them inactive. So the first thing, once we've created a vendor, we're just going to go right through this little menu here of icons. So the first one is we're going to create a purchase order. I want to order different items from a vendor, and they could be for a store that I need to fill or for a customer. In here you'll notice they're using Hamby distributors, and then it's got all of his computer cases. It does have that some of them are special ordered for a customer and the rest look like they'll just sit in inventory. But by putting my customer here, it also puts the cost of this product that I'll be able to run reports on and see what type of profit I'm making. This screen has a lot of information. Main thing is we get this in there. You can look at summary or recent transactions you've done with this vendor, but that's really all you need, and you can go ahead and email it directly to your distributor. Next up, you can receive inventory with a bill or receive inventory without a bill. So we're going to go ahead and receive the inventory with the bill. And I'll put in the bill, the Hamby's distributors, and what comes up is QuickBooks knows automatically there's an open purchase order. Do I want to use it? And if there's multiple, it will actually let you pick which PO you want to fill. Because what it's going to do is take all that hard work I did on that purchase order and just move it right into the bill. I could get rid of any of these line items if they didn't ship, especially when you're going and receiving them. It would just leave that open, that line item on that purchase order. So a couple things on the bill is you're going to put the date of the bill, the reference number, which is the bill number on the vendor invoice you get, the total. Usually as it pre-fills it matches the total here, but I'll always have a shipping cost on that. So I want you to notice how the items fill, but there's another tab that I can do expenses on. And that expense tab will let me include the shipping, which then, ups my amount due on that. But I'm then counting on everything for that shipment and that bill, and I would hit save and close. Next up, just in going with the line of the best practices, we want to go down and pay those bills. So in paying the bill, it usually puts all the vendors in there that you owe, and you'll go through that. You could sort it and filter it by that vendor. But the main thing is I just want to pay this one bill. And down here it says, all right, here's the payment date. And do you want to print it? Meaning, do you have checks that you want to put check stock in and just print it from your printer? Or you can assign it a check number. And again, making sure that it's coming out of the right checking account if you have multiple on that. But by selecting the bill pay, I could pay the full amount, or I could highlight this and pay them $1,000 onto it. So you have a lot of option here, but it's keeping track of it for you. And once you have paid that, I can come right into my check register. Here is my QuickBooks checking. And I can see that that check was written and it is deducting out of my balance. All right, now they always put inside vendors is sales tax. I know sales tax is really associated with customer, but it's a vendor that you pay. So this is really nice too. They've made this an easy process. If I needed to manage my sales tax, you can set up your preferences, see your liability, view your different sales tax items, and also a sales tax revenue summary. And then the almighty pay the sales tax. So we'll look at the first one, which shows the sales tax liability. You've got your total sales, any non-taxable sales, and then the total taxable sales. You'll also notice in here, if I go to click pay the sales tax, I have an option to pay the different tax I've collected through a period of time, and it will come out of my checking, and I can, to be printed or hit OK if I'm just using like an EFT. All right, next up, customers, estimates, invoices, payments and deposits, the good stuff. All right, first thing, just like the vendors, you can come over here and we need to go to the customer center. So as you go to your customer center, you add them through here, or you could have just added them on the fly, but here we're looking a little more detail of what everyone owes us. And again, when you're looking at a customer, it looks similar to the vendor. You'll put in the pertinent information, name, address, and then it does have some payments settings. If you're using someone that uses the same credit card, you can store that information here. So again, if you need to make them inactive, it's down towards the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the estimate. And the estimate in this case will select our customer and the item that we're selling the customer on this. And again, this is telling me what store it's at. So if I had multiple stores, I could run a profit and loss by class on my stores. And then there are some items you can see that have been set for taxable and non-taxable. And whatever tax is set up for that customer, or you can set it up on the fly here, their sales tax rate and then the total. But just like the vendor where you have a purchase order and it turns into the bill, you can do the same thing here where you can create the invoice or sales order, and it moves all that information. It, instead of being an estimate, now it's an invoice with the same information that we had on the estimate to bring right over. Other than you might have a PO number for it now, you could add that in, and then you can also email it as you have completed the invoice. Now, once you've completed that invoice and they've sent you a check or an EFT, you can apply the payment by going record a payment. And this screen again brings up your customer, and it will show you all the open invoices. Don't forget though that QuickBooks Payments works great. I use that myself. I take American Express, Discover. They handle all the credit card drop down so that when someone pays your invoice, it's in a secure setting and they can go ahead and get a receipt right then. So that's really cool when you set that up. Also, you'll be receiving, in this case, a check, and I can put the date I received the check and the check number and automatically select the invoice. Say they didn't pay me the full invoice, I'd come over here and select the amount. Say they paid $100 on it, and it's going to keep track. They still owe me $123.18. Now, last but not least, as we went to estimate, invoice, receiving payment, you actually have to make a deposit. This is under your banking. And in recording a deposit, if you receive payments from different people, and they could be going to different checking accounts. In this case, we're going to say that Alois, we're going to select this 1231 and hit OK, and it fills in to deposit into my checking account on this date, meaning I'm going into the bank today, so we should be able to track it immediately at the bank. And you'll see it's coming from undeposited funds. That means I've selected a bunch of invoices for payment. Maybe you'll receive 5 checks one day, 2 checks, and then you decide to go to the bank. They all sit there as undeposited funds so that they're received. You go make the deposit, select all the ones, and it matches exactly with the bank, making reconciliation a lot easier. Again, I'm just taking you back to the checking account where everything moves in and out that I pay or I receive money from, and you can see I received the $223.18 and therefore increasing my balance. All right, next up, we're going to go over again. We're still in this banking part now. If we want to write a hand check going through, so you'll notice if I select Bayshore Water, it will pre-fill all the address information, and it will also show me that my bills usually, when I'm writing it to Bayshore, goes to utilities, and that's the main thing, is getting the account in there. You can reprint the check. You can do after the fact checks and put in, you're trying to get caught up, you'll just put in the check number you used. All right, and then again, the banking drop down brings you down to use your register, where I could see the Bayshore Water check is deducted out of my account. All right, the fun part. There's no one to double check you when you're a lone accountant, business owner, self-employed. So your double check is reconciling with your bank. And in a reconciliation screen, it's real simple. Even if you put your beginning balances in, like I said, from like 1231, you're going to start 1/1. So when you get ready, the balance moves forward with you, and you're putting your ending balance from your bank statement and hitting continue. This will show all the items that should be clearing your account, and these are all the deposits, all the checks and payments, and the difference down here is 0. That's key. But you'll notice, see, you should be matching with your bank. Your bank said you had $73,000, and these are the deposits and checks that went through, leaving you an ending balance of 107. Make sure that's 0 though. This really does keep track and make sure you've got everything that went through your bank. It's your double check system. Going on to financials, inventory, job costs, and profit reports. So they have over 365 pre-canned reports in here. And how do you get to those reports? Take your drop down from reports. One of the ones the main ones I use we're going over today. So the profit and loss, that's of course for your banks, for your personal, so you can go through and look and see where you are in your business. So in a profit and loss, it's your income accounts minus your expenses. So it's got a total income of 77 minus my cost of goods, giving me a gross profit of 56,000. And then all my other expenses, auto, office, payroll, all those go through, and that way you can see your net income. Now the next one I use, which I really like for what we're going over today, is job profitability summary. Again, reports, jobs, time and mileage, and profitability summary. In this, it gives me for a period of time, in this case it's all time, it shows Jim, Dave, all of my customers here, what it cost me, and that's coming from the purchase orders, and then the revenue I billed out, showing what my profit is so far. So that looks pretty good. Next up I like is the inventory report. So again, reports, inventory, and this is a valuation summary. So if I needed to see what was in inventory, what the total costs are, and then what my value is of that inventory and the percentage of that. So that becomes one of those things where you're able to budget a bit better knowing what you've got in there. And then again, my favorite, these are for my small shops that they can just, a lot of beauty salons use these for counting, their bottles on the shelf, or in this case, the computer guy who wants to count how many hard drives he has on hand. This physical inventory sheet I run at the end of the month. Some people do it quarterly, go out, check the warehouse, check my garage, depending on where you're working these days, and be able to see the inventory levels, and you can put your physical count right here in case you need to adjust it. Next up, when we're talking about people owing me money, that is my most important report, actually. So I go to reports, customer receivable, and open invoices. And we're showing that we have 77,000 out there. It also gives you the terms and the due dates on that. So just like people owing me money, we owe money. So we'll go over to reports, vendors, payables, unpaid bills detail. And in this is where you'll see all the bills that you owe and any credits. Like in this case, it looks like we had a credit on there, but the system keeps track of all that. Now that was pretty fast and furious for everyone, but what it does is you can always just, hold it there at vendors and be able to, kind of look at the screen and get onto your own home computer. I do offer training. My training is $75 an hour online, and for the most part, I can train the desktop and the online version. Remotely. It's been quite easy actually during this COVID if whoever really wanted to learn their books during COVID, but I do offer my services on Tuesdays and Thursdays.